The twin suns of Galdrex burned brightly over the great arena. Thousands of alien spectators filled the high stone stands, cheering and chanting. They were here for a special event, one that had not happened in centuries. At the highest seat sat Empress Virelia, ruler of the Galdrex Empire. Her royal robes glittered with silver threads. Her golden eyes were calm, but inside she felt proud. His strongest warrior, Champion Draegr, was about to fight a strange creature from a far-off world, a human from Earth. Humans were small, weak-looking, and new to the galactic stage. Many in the Empire believed they were no threat at all. But this one had demanded a formal trial by combat, an ancient challenge still respected by law. Virelia had allowed it, knowing Draegr would crush the human quickly. She would then offer mercy to Earth, and the Empire would remain strong. Below, the gate opened. The human stepped into the arena. His name was Captain Raylan Ward, and he walked calmly across the sandy ground. He wore no heavy armor, only a flexible suit made of strange black fabric. In his hand was a short blade, simple in design. The crowd laughed. "He brings a knife to fight Draegr," one noble said. "He doesn't even have armor," another shouted. Virelia didn't laugh. She watched carefully. Then, from the opposite gate, Draegr entered. The giant warrior stood. Nearly 9 feet tall, with thick skin like stone and long arms that dragged a heavy battle axe, he roared, lifting the weapon above his head. The arena shook with the sound. Raylan stood still. His eyes didn't blink. A loud gong rang through the air. The fight had begun. Draegr charged, his axe slicing through the air with brutal force. Raylan moved aside with quick steps, dodging the blow. The axe hit the sand where Raylan had stood, throwing dust into the air. Raylan didn't attack, kept moving, watching. The second strike came faster. Draegr swung again, roaring with rage. Raylan ducked and stepped in close. With a sudden burst of speed, he slashed at Draeger's leg. A small cut appeared barely visible, but Draegr grunted. The crowd grew quiet. No one had ever landed a clean strike on Draegr so easily. Draegr shouted again, swinging in a wide circle. Raylan jumped back, and he moved in again, this time slashing across Draeger's ribs and then spinning behind him. The crowd gasped. "What is he doing?" someone whispered. "He dances like wind," said one of Virelia's maidens. Virelia leaned forward. For the first time, she felt uneasy. Draegr, now angry and bleeding, lifted his axe for a killing strike.
Ow.
Raylan didn't move away this time. He stepped forward, dropped to one knee, and with perfect timing, drove his short blade upward into Draeger's chest. The alien warrior froze. Then, with one clean motion, Raylan pulled the blade sideways, cutting through armor, bone, and heart. Draegr collapsed, split in half. Dead, the arena went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. Raylan stood slowly, his blade dripping. He looked up at the royal seat. The Empress stared down at him, shocked. Her champion, the pride of her empire, was dead, defeated by a human. A tall advisor leaned toward her and whispered, "By the law of sacred combat, the victor must be granted the champion's bond." Virelia's eyes widened. That law had not been spoken in 100 years. "The champion's bond," she repeated quietly. It meant the winner could claim the champion's title, both or even if declared before the match the companions assigned to the champion. Draegr, as the Empress's personal champion, had been granted a great honor, the presence of 6 royal maidens. Noblewomen trained to serve in court and assist him in formal matters. Now, by ancient law, they belonged to Raylan. The crowd was still quiet. No one knew what to say. Raylan looked up and shouted, "I came here for respect, not rewards. I don't want slaves. I don't want prizes." But the law was clear. The Empress stood and raised a hand. "You have earned them, Captain Raylan. The law is ancient, and it is binding." Raylan clenched his jaw. He didn't want this. But if he refused, it would insult the Empire and possibly start a war. He nodded once. "I accept only in form. I will not mistreat them." The crowd gave a mixed cheer, part confusion, part respect. Guards entered the arena. The body of Draegr was taken away. Raylan was led to the palace, not as a prisoner, but as an honored guest. And now, by law, a bonded companion to the royal household. Virelia watched him go. Her heart burned with conflict. He had destroyed her pride. He had followed the law. And he had spoken with honor. She had expected a savage. But what she saw was something else. Something dangerous. Something human. Captain Raylan Ward sat in a quiet chamber inside the Palace of Galdrex. The room was large and clean, with silver walls and tall windows. Alien art covered the ceiling. Soft lights glowed from the floor. But Raylan didn't care about the beauty. He had just won a fight he never wanted to fight in now. By alien law, he had been rewarded with 6 royal maidens. He didn't even know their names. A knock came at the door. A tall guard entered. Behind him were 6 women, all dressed in royal white. They walked in silently, heads held high. These were no ordinary servants. Each of them moved with grace and strength. Raylan could tell they were trained in more than just service. The lead maiden stepped forward. She was tall and had silver blue skin and sharp violet eyes. She bowed slightly. "I am Jarina, first of the 6, she said. "We are your bonded companions now, by royal decree." Raylan stood up. "I didn't ask for this." Jarina's face stayed calm. "It does not matter. The law is clear. The Empress has honored the old code. We belong to you." "I don't own people," Raylan said firmly. Jarina looked at the others. They didn't speak, but their expressions were mixed, some curious, some cold, some simply waiting. Raylan took a deep breath. "You're free to go wherever you want. I won't keep you here." "You cannot release us," Jarina said softly. "Only the Empress can cancel the bond, and she is not. Leaving you without permission would break the law." Raylan frowned. "Then we're stuck." She nodded. "Yes." Raylan looked at them again. "Fine. Then we live by my rules. I don't want servants. I just want peace. You can stay here, but only as guests, not property." The 6 maidens exchanged glances. This human was strange. Most warriors would brag or boast. Some would be cruel. This one was different. Garina said nothing more and led the others to a side room. They would stay nearby as required, but they would watch him carefully. In the royal hall Lempress, Virelia sat on her high throne, thinking deeply. The nobles around her whispered. Some were angry, some were confused. A few were impressed by the human. "He should be punished for breaking tradition," said one elder. "He followed the law exactly," replied another. "And he showed honor." Virelia raised a hand. The room fell silent. "The law is sacred," she said. "It cannot be broken when it is useful and ignored when it is not. Raylan Ward is our guest. He has earned his place." Still her heart was troubled. Draeger had been her strongest champion. She had trusted him. Now he was dead, and the man who killed him sat inside her palace. She had watched the human closely during the fight. He wasn't just fast, he was calm, focused. Mind was sharp. He had won not just with skill, but with control. She needed to know more about him. Inside the palace, the next morning, Raylan walked through the palace gardens. The sky above was a soft orange. Flowers that glowed in the dark lined the stone paths. He saw strange birds fly by. He wasn't alone. One of the maidens followed at a distance. Lyra, the youngest. She had short hair and curious eyes. She seemed less angry than the others. "You don't have to follow me," Raylan said without turning. "I want to," she replied. He smiled a little. "What do you want to know? Why did you come here?" Raylan stopped walking. "To show the Empire that humans are not weak. We've been pushed aside in every council. It's called unfit, uncivilized. I wanted to prove them wrong by killing." Lyra asked softly. "No," he said. "By surviving. By winning with control. Igor could have killed me, but he didn't. He wanted to crush me. I just reacted." Lyra thought for a moment. "You don't act like other warriors. On Earth, we fight only when we must. Strength isn't just about muscles. It's about choices." She nodded slowly. "Maybe you are stronger than you look." Raylan gave a small laugh.
Ow.
That's the idea. Whispers of danger while Raylan spoke with Lyra in the garden. A group of noble lords met in secret. They were not happy. This human threatens our way of life, one said. He walks freely inside the palace, surrounded by royal blood. He must be removed, said another. A plan was formed, quiet, deadly. If the human were to fall by accident, the law would not bind them again, and the Empress would not risk her power defending an outsider. Varelia's decision later, that evening. Empress Varelia sent a message to Raylan. He was invited to dine with her in the royal chamber. The palace had not seen such an invitation in many years. The last time was when Draeger was chosen. Raylan prepared calmly. The 6 maidens helped him dress in proper robes. Garina still. Formal adjusted his collar. You're meeting the Empress, she said. Speak wisely. Many eyes are watching. I always do, Raylan replied. Captain Raylan Ward stepped into the royal dining hall. The room was grand, with crystal pillars and floating lights above a long table made of living stone. Strange alien music played softly in the background. Seated at the head of the table was Empress Varelia, dressed in royal red and silver. Her golden eyes were sharp as ever. 6 nobles sat on each side of her. Raylan could feel their eyes studying him. The Empress raised her hand. Captain Raylan, welcome. Raylan bowed respectfully. Your Majesty, you fought with skill, she said, voice calm. More importantly, with control. That is rare. I didn't come to impress anyone, Raylan replied. I only wanted your people to see that Earth is not weak. Varelia nodded. They saw, and they're still watching. She motioned for him to sit. A servant brought dishes of glowing fruit and roasted creatures. Raylan picked carefully, trying not to offend. The Empress watched his every move. One noble leaned forward. Tell us, Captain, what does Earth offer the Empire besides blades and stubborn pride? Raylan looked at him. Innovation, spirit, strategy. We don't grow up in luxury. We survive. We adapt. You've built walls. We've built engines. Another noble frowned. You speak boldly for someone who arrived alone. Raylan smiled. That's why it matters. The table fell quiet. Varelia spoke again. One of our strongest warriors. But the real question is, can you survive our court? The 6 maidens observed back in Raylan's guest quarters. The 6 royal maidens gathered privately. Garina the first stood by the window, arms crossed. He spoke calmly. Even in front of nobles, said Lyra, the youngest. He wasn't. Afraid he should be, said Vale, the most serious among them. This palace is more dangerous than the arena. But he's honest, Lyra added. He didn't treat the Empress like a prize. He treated her like a leader. Jarina turned. That's why he's dangerous. It's not because he's strong, but because he's changing how people think. Secret meetings in a shadowed hallway far from the palace lights. A group of nobles met. Again, in secret. Their leader, Lord Tyrion, slammed his fist on the table. The human must go. Every day he stays, more people whisper about change, about alliances, about rewriting old laws. He's done nothing wrong, said one noble. Exactly, Tyrion replied. He is too perfect. It makes him a threat. If we wait too long, we'll be under his influence. Ah! A quiet voice spoke from the corner. Then let the death be silent. Clean. Make it look like an accident. Tyrion nodded. It will be done. Raylan's lessons the next morning. Raylan stood in a training courtyard with 3 of the maidens, held a wooden staff and moved slowly, showing them basic earth fighting stances. This style is called Archon, he explained. It's not just for strength, it's for control, balance. The maidens followed, copying his motions. Arana watched from the side, arms folded, saying nothing. But she noticed something Adraelin didn't teach like a warrior hungry for power. Is taught like someone who cared about growth. Lyra smiled as she finished a move. You make it seem easy. It's not, Raylan said. But with time, it becomes part of you. Vale raised a question. Why are you teaching us? Because I trust you, Raylan said simply. And because one day you may need to protect yourselves. Not as servants, but as equals. Eyes narrowed. You speak as if the old ways are broken. Raylan looked at her. Maybe they are. Empress in thought that night, Empress Varelia sat in her private chamber. Her advisor entered, holding a data tablet. There is unrest in the council, he said. Many fear the humans' influence. Let them fear, she said. He shows more honor than most of my court. But honor does not stop knives in the dark. Varelia's expression turned hard. Law to be harmed. If anyone dares touch him, I will burn their name from memory. The advisor bowed. As you command. But the Empress still felt uneasy. There was something in the air change. Danger. Something rising. A blade in the nitralon. Slept lightly. On Earth, soldiers never slept too deep. And tonight, that training saved him. A soft click came from the ceiling vent. A whisper of movement. Raylan rolled from his bed just as a thin dart hit the pillow where his head had been. He landed on the floor, silent, eyes scanning. The door creaked open. A figure stepped in, cloaked and masked. Blade drawn. Raylan stayed low, moving behind a table. As the figure stepped forward, Raylan grabbed a lamp and threw it hard, shattering it against the attacker's head. The masked figure stumbled. Raylan lunged, grabbed the arm, and twisted. The assassin dropped the blade, pulled a second one. A shout came from the hallway. Lyra, she ran in, saw the fight, and threw a short spear she had taken from a wall. The weapon struck the assassin's shoulder. He fell. Guards arrived seconds. Later, alerted by the noise, the attacker was captured. Raylan, breathing hard, nodded to Lyra. Good throw, she smiled. Dodge. The Empress React's morning light filled the palace when the Empress heard the news. A nobleman's guard, her advisor said, pointing to the arrested assassin. The mark on his blade is clear. Varelia stood slowly. Lord Terran. Empress. She closed her eyes. Prepare the council. There will be justice. The palace was quiet, but the silence felt heavy. After the assassination attempt, security doubled. Guards now stood at every door. Cameras watched every hallway. Still, Captain Raylan Ward knew this wasn't over. One failed attack usually meant another was coming. But he didn't hide. Instead, he walked the gardens every morning, just as before. If his enemies wanted him afraid, they would be disappointed. The 6 royal maidens stayed close, more alert than ever. Even Jarina, who had once been cold toward Raylan, now stood near him during walks. Lyra, always curious, stayed by his side like a shadow. One morning, as Raylan moved along the edge of the glowing flower beds, Jarina stepped beside him. You should be careful, she said. You walk too openly. Raylan looked up at the golden sky. If I hide, they win. I didn't come here to live in fear. Jarina studied him. You're not like the warriors I trained to serve. You treat people like equals. Raylan turned. To her, because you are. Where I come from, respect is earned by action, not by birth. She didn't answer. But she stayed beside him the rest of the walk. Court in chaos, sighed the high chamber. The Empress sat before her nobles. An attack was made on a guest under my protection, Empress Varelia said clearly. A guest who honored our laws. The nobles stayed quiet. She looked at Lord Tyrion, who stood with cold eyes. The blade used by the assassin carried your family crest, she continued. Time bowed slowly. I do not deny the crest, but I know nothing of this attack. A rogue guard, perhaps. Varelia narrowed her eyes. You forget that I have seen fear used as a weapon before. This was no accident. Some nobles looked nervous. Others whispered. I will not allow such treachery in my court, the Empress said. Let it be known, if one more hand is raised against the human, I will strip every house of its title and rewrite the council from the ground up. The threat was clear. Was shaken. Secrets and signals that night in his chamber, Raylan looked over a tablet screen. Messages from Earth had started coming in. His mission had been noticed by the Terran diplomatic corps. They were proud but cautious. He was told to stay alert and avoid full war. The door opened softly. It was Vale, one of the 6 maidens. Usually quiet, she was known for her sharp senses. "There's movement in the West Garden," she whispered. "I saw a signal light flash 3 times. Raylan stood at once. Me. The hidden meeting Grelin Vale and Jarina moved quietly through a hidden corridor that led to the West Garden. Moonlight shone through glass leaves. The night air was cool. From behind a sculpture, they saw 2 figures in cloaks speaking in low tones. One held a small light device. The other passed him a strange vial. Raylan nodded to Jarina. She moved fast, drawing a stun rod from her cloak. Vale flanked the second figure. In seconds, both cloaked spies were on the ground. Stunned but alive. Raylan pulled off one of the hoods. It was a palace chef. Jarina looked at the vial. "Poison. This was meant for your food." Raylan sighed. Another silent attack. They sent word to the Empress immediately. That night, 3 more workers were arrested. A quiet network of traitors had begun to form, servants paid by powerful nobles who wanted Raylan gone. A private conversation the next day, Empress Virelia sent for Raylan. He entered her chamber alone this time. "You have enemies here," she said. "I noticed," Raylan replied calmly. She looked at him closely. "You are a soldier, but you are also more than that." "I was a captain in Earth's Navy," Raylan said. "I fought to protect my people. But I was chosen for this mission because I understand diplomacy too." She walked slowly across the room. "You've caused a storm here. I don't think you even meant to." "Sometimes storms are needed," Raylan answered. The Empress stopped and turned. "The old ways of Galdrex were built on strength. Champions. Conquest. But your victory and your actions have made me question what strength really means." Raylan said nothing. He let her think. "I am calling a grand tribunal," she said finally, "to review the ancient laws, to decide if the bond of champions should be rewritten." Raylan raised his eyebrows. "That's bold." "Some will resist," she said. "Many will hate it, but I have made my decision." Raylan nodded. "Then you won't stand alone." The maiden's choice. Later that night, the 6 maidens gathered. In their shared chamber, they had served many leaders before, but never one like Raylan. "We must choose where we stand," Jarina said. "With him or with the old ways?" "I already chose," Lyra said. "He treats us better than any noble ever did." "I agree," said Vale. "He risked his life to stop poison in our own halls." The others nodded. Jarina looked at the group. "Then we stand with him." Winds of change. The next morning, the palace square was filled. People had heard of the coming grand tribunal. The city outside buzzed with rumors. Was the Empress truly planning to change laws that were older than some planets? Inside the palace, Raylan stood ready. The 6 maidens stood behind him, not as servants, but as silent supporters. Enemies still whispered. Danger still waited, but something was changing. Hope was growing. The royal court of Galdrex had never seen such a strange gathering. Humans, aliens, nobles, warriors, scientists, and even common citizens stood side by side inside the judgment hall. The air was tense. At the center, Captain Raylan Ward stood straight and calm, his hands behind his back. To his left stood the Empress Virelia, and behind him stood the 6 royal maidens Rena. Lyra, Vale, Amira, Sonel, and Tanan, longer dressed as servants. But as proud individuals with their own identities, today Raylan was not here as a soldier or outsider. He was here as a challenger to an ancient law. The trial of strength and wisdom was not a battle of weapons. It was a test of reason, values, and the ability to influence the people. And Raylan was about to face one of the greatest minds of the Empire, Lord Magistrate Durox, as a strict believer in the old ways. The debate begins. The Empress raised her hand. "Let the trial begin. Each side will speak. The council will listen. The people will decide." Lord Durox stepped forward first. "Our traditions are not chains," he began. "They are pillars. The champion's bond has stood for 1,000 years. It rewards strength, protects bloodlines, and ensures order. Without it, chaos will follow." Murmurs of agreement echoed in the room. Then Raylan stepped forward. I respect your traditions, he said, his voice steady. But any system that gives people two warriors as property is not tradition, it's oppression. I didn't come to change your culture. I came to remind you what honor really means. The room went silent. A choice of honor. Raylan walked to the center of the hall. When I defeated your champion, the law gave me the Empress and her maidens as rewards. But I refused. Why? Because true warriors don't fight to own. They fight to protect. He turned toward the Empress. I gave back what was not mine to take. That is strength. That is leadership. The crowd was listening more closely now. One of the council elders stood. Then what do you offer in place of our ancient law? Raylan looked up at the hundreds of faces. A new system. One where warriors are rewarded with honor, rank, land, and respect, not people. Where allies are chosen, not claimed. Where freedom is not a gift, but a right. Voices from the people. To everyone's surprise, one of the royal maidens, Lyra, stepped forward. I was raised to be obedient, she said, taught that my future depended on who won a fight. But Raylan showed me that I have value not because of what I wear or how I serve, but because I think, speak, and choose. Then Vale, the strongest of the six, spoke next. I have trained with soldiers. I know strength. Raylan has it. But he also has restraint, which is harder. He doesn't command with fear. He inspires with trust. One by one, the other maidens shared their thoughts. They talked not just about Raylan, but about the change he brought. And for the first time in the court's history, voices of women once considered quiet and invisible were being heard. A turning point. Lord Durox grew impatient. Are we to rewrite law because of one man's kindness? He shouted, Will we let a foreigner destroy what our ancestors built? Raylan responded calmly. This isn't about me. This is about what's right. He looked at the Empress. I didn't take the bond. I didn't break your law. I respected your process. But now I ask you to look at your own people. Ask them what kind of future they want. The Empress turned to the audience. People of Galdrex, she said, her voice rising. The time has come to decide. Do we hold on to an old way that rewards victory with ownership? Or do we walk into a future where every person has the freedom to choose? A long silence followed. Then someone in the crowd shouted, Let the bond end. Another voice echoed, We choose freedom. Soon, hundreds were speaking, then thousands across the palace, in the city streets, on the broadcast screens across the planet. The council votes. The Council of 13 met in private chambers that evening. Each counselor carried the weight of a world on their shoulders. After hours of debate, the Empress called for the vote. One by one, the counselors cast their decisions. When the final vote was tallied, the Empress stood before the public again. The council has spoken, she said. By a vote of 10-3, the champion's bond law shall be abolished. The crowd exploded in cheers. Raylan smiled slightly. The maidens around him were crying, not from sadness, but from relief. Generations of silence had been broken. Raylan's reflection that night. Raylan stood alone at the edge of the palace balcony, watching the city glow under the stars. He thought of Earth, of war, of missions, of choices. He had fought many battles, but none like this. This one was not one with fists or lasers, but with words, empathy, and patience. Jarina joined him quietly. You changed everything, she said. No, Raylan replied. We did. The sun was rising over the capital city of Galdrex. The great towers glowed with morning light, and banners of peace fluttered from every wall. Inside the palace, the air was calm but filled with expectation. It was the day of the grand tribunals. Final ruling. Captain Raylan Ward stood inside the Hall of Voices. The wide chamber was filled with nobles, guards, scholars, and visitors from distant worlds. Thousands watched the event live across the empire. Everyone was waiting for one answer. Would the old champion's bond law be broken forever? Raylan stood tall, dressed in Earth's navy blue ceremonial uniform. The 6 royal maidens stood behind him, not as servants, but as equals, each dressed in elegant robes of their own choosing, and at the center stood Empress Varelia Strong, calm and proud. She raised her hand and silence filled the hall. "Today," she began, "we end what should have ended long ago." The nobles listened closely. For centuries, our law rewarded strength with ownership. Warriors who won battles were given people as prizes. It was our way. But strength without wisdom leads to cruelty. She paused, then looked directly at Raylan. "This human defeated my champion in fair combat. He earned his reward by our rules. But instead of taking power, he showed something greater: mercy." The Empress's voice grew stronger. "We must no longer confuse tradition with truth. And so, I declare that the champion's bond law is now abolished. From this day forward, no warrior shall ever claim another person as property." The crowd was silent for a moment, shocked, uncertain. Then someone began to clap. One noble stood. Then another dot, and soon the entire hall was filled with applause, loud and long. The new law was announced. Champions would still be honored, but only through titles, land, medals, or political roles, never people. The old ways were history now. The 6 maidens were officially freed from any bond. But none of them chose to leave Raylan. Instead, they stepped forward in front of the entire council. Jarina, once the most serious of them all, spoke first. "Are no longer bound by law, but we choose to remain by his side, as advisors, as learners, and as allies." Lyra, smiling, added, "Because we believe in what he stands for. He changed us. Oh. And now we will help change others." The crowd cheered. Again. Honor beyond titles. Later that evening, a private ceremony was held inside the palace garden. The Empress stood with Raylan under the light of the twin moons. "I want to honor you with a new title," she said. "And one that has never been given before." Raylan raised an eyebrow. Listening, she smiled slightly. "Dwar now. The first bridgekeeper of Galdrex, a title that stands for peace, wisdom, and the power to connect worlds." She handed him a crystal badge, shaped like a star, and a bridge crossing through it. Raylan bowed his head. "I'll carry this with respect." A message to Earth soon after. A communication was sent to Earth's leaders. It showed Raylan standing beside the Empress. The message was clear: Galdrex and Earth now walk together. We invite peace, knowledge exchange, and cultural understanding. This human has shown us a better way. We are ready to grow together. Earth responded with honor and gratitude. For the first time in history, an official Terran-Galdrex alliance was formed. Other alien empires watched carefully. If the proud Galdrex could change, maybe others would too. A new life begins. Days turned into weeks. Raylan stayed on Galdrex not as a prisoner or warrior, but as a builder of the future. He helped create schools that taught both Earth and Galdrex history. He shared peaceful strategies, medicine, and ideas. The maidens helped lead programs. For young girls, showing them they could become more than just servants, they could be scholars. Pilots, leaders, Jarina began writing new codes for the Royal Guard. Vale trained officers in Earth-style defense. Lyra became a student of space science and engineering. Raylan watched it all with quiet pride. One final conversation one evening. Raylan and Empress Varelia sat in the garden where it all began. "It's strange," she said, looking at the stars. "All this started with a single fight." Raylan nodded. "It's a single choice to do something different." "You could have taken everything," she said, "yet you gave it back." "I didn't want power," he said softly. "I wanted peace." The Empress looked at him. "And you got both." They sat in silence, watching the night sky. It was quiet but not empty. The future was coming, and it was full of light. The legacy of Raylan's story spread far beyond Galdrex. Other worlds began to question their old systems. Young leaders studied the tribunal's records. Historians called it the turning of the crown, a time when one human reminded an empire what true strength really was. Statues were built. Books were written. His name was added to both Earth and Galdrex history as a hero, not because he fought, but because he chose not to conquer. Raylan Ward, the man who split a champion in half, ended up splitting a 1,000-year land brought to civilizations together.